I walked into her office with a gift in my pocket, only to overhear her telling another man I was just safe. That was the moment I realized I'd been loving someone who already let me go. I stood by the window watching the car slowly back out of the driveway. It paused at the curb, turned right, and rolled down the street until it was gone. Just like that. Strangely, I didn't feel what I thought I would. After 10 years together, I expected some kind of wave, grief, anger, something. But all I could muster was a quiet shrug. No tears, no pit in my stomach. Just this dull, empty stillness. Maybe I should have felt heartbreak. Maybe I should have begged her to stay. But the truth? I felt numb. I shook my head, more out of habit than emotion, and made my way toward the kitchen. The faucet had been dripping all week, and I figured fixing it would keep my hands busy, maybe give my mind a break. But as I walked to the sink, the last half hour started replaying in my head like a movie I didn't ask to watch. When I got home from work, I was caught off guard. Rachel was already at the kitchen table. She was never home before me. Most days she got in a good half hour, sometimes even an hour after I did. But there she was, seated with this look on her face and a full glass of wine in front of her. That alone felt off. Rachel hardly ever drank, especially not alone. And there wasn't a pot on the stove or anything simmering in the oven. That's when I knew something was coming. She didn't waste time. "Can you sit down, Mark?" she said almost too calmly. Her voice had this hollow weight to it, and I could already feel my chest tighten. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, cracked it open, and slid into the chair across from her. She didn't even sip her wine, just looked me dead in the eye and said, "Mark, I think you felt it too. There's been space between us. For the past 6 months, maybe more. I can't explain exactly how or why, but we're drifting. And I've tried to bring it up, but every time I do, you just tell me we're in a rough patch, that things will smooth out eventually." She paused for a second. Her fingers traced the rim of her glass. "I don't think waiting is helping anymore. I think we need to separate. Not a divorce, not yet. Just some time apart. I need space, Mark. I need to step back and figure out who I am again, and maybe then where we went wrong." I tried to reason with her. "Come on, Rach. It's not that bad. Every couple hits rough waters. But we can't fix any of this if we're not under the same roof, talking, working on it together." She looked down. Her voice went soft, but every word cut deep. "Mark, you think the only issue is that we've stopped being intimate? Like if I just gave in and let you hold me, touch me, that everything would fall back into place. But it's not that simple. I can't even explain why I pull away from you now. I still care about you, I really do. But something in me is broken. Or blocked. And I don't know what it is. All I know is I can't keep pretending." I didn't know what to say. I still don't. "I'm not throwing away a decade of our lives," she added, "but I am trying to find a way to get back to us. Maybe from the outside in. Maybe this space will help us see things we've stopped seeing in each other." And just like that, she stood up, grabbed her keys, and left. "I think we need a break." That's what she said, plain and simple. No drama in her voice, just quiet finality. Then she added, "I packed my things already. I'm heading to stay with my sister until I figure out where I'm going next." She gave me this look, like she didn't want to hurt me, but she wasn't going to sugarcoat it either. "I'll call you once a week just to check in, keep in touch," she said. And that was it. She stood up, grabbed her purse, and told me she had to meet up with Mary at 7. No hug, no kiss goodbye. Not even a long look back. Just the sound of the front door closing and the realization that I was completely, officially alone. At first, the news didn't make waves. Most of our friends didn't even know we'd split. The ones who did know, well, they did their best. They tried to keep my spirits up, dropping by with a six-pack, sending me stupid memes telling me I'd be okay. I appreciated it even if I couldn't feel it yet. True to her word, Rachel called me every week. Same time, every Sunday evening. It was always short, polite, almost businesslike. She'd ask how I was doing and I'd tell her I was managing. Then I'd ask her the same. Every time she gave the same answer, "I'm fine." Eventually I started slipping in a question. Carefully, like I was testing the water. "Do you think you'll be ready to come home soon?" And like clockwork her response came, "Not yet." Week after week the same exchange. Me holding on to hope, her keeping her distance. But then the whispers started. At first they were just offhand comments. A mutual friend mentioned she thought Rachel might be seeing someone. Then someone else said they'd heard Rachel was living with a guy. At first I refused to believe it. I clung to her words, that she just needed space, time to think. That this was temporary. But the more I tried to ignore it, the louder the whispers got. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to know the truth. So I decided to find out for myself. I tried to track down where she was staying. Drove by her sister's place a few times. No sign of her. I even asked around, carefully, but nobody seemed willing to say much. Or maybe they just didn't know. Either way, I kept hitting dead ends. Frustrated and confused, I started thinking maybe I needed to take it a step further. Maybe I needed to hire someone. A private investigator. I hated the idea, but the not knowing was eating me alive. I met up with my buddies, Josh and Tyler, for dinner that night. I told them everything, my suspicions, my plan to dig deeper. Mid-conversation, I noticed the two of them exchange this look. One of those quiet glances people share when they know something you don't. My heart sank. Something was off. "Save your money, Mark," Josh said after a pause. "You don't need a PI. The rumors, they're not rumors. They're true." I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. "What do you mean?" He sighed like he'd been holding it in for weeks. "Most of us already know. We didn't know how to tell you. We care about you, man. That's why no one wanted to be the one to say it." "Say what, Josh?" I asked, though I could already feel the answer tightening in my chest. "Rachel left you for someone else," he said quietly. "She's living with a guy named Adam. Adam Turner. He works with her. You probably never met him." I felt the blood drain from my face. Adam Turner? I've never even heard that name. "He's one of her co-workers," Josh added. "They've been involved for a while, I think." "So she left our marriage for this guy? She just moved in with him?" "Yeah," he said. "That's how it looks." I shook my head, everything swirling. Then why the whole separation thing? Why not just file for divorce if that's what she wanted? Josh looked me straight in the eye. "Because this is Rachel we're talking about, man. You know her." Turns out, Rachel had been playing a long game. She didn't just stumble into this new life with Adam, she mapped it out. Every step. Every contingency. She'd been with him almost a year before making any real moves, and from what I could piece together, even the so-called break was a backup plan. A way to keep one foot out the door just in case life with Adam didn't live up to her standards. And the kicker? My friends knew. Not all of them, maybe, but enough to make me feel like a complete fool. They kept quiet, letting me walk around blind, clinging to hope while Rachel was already building a future without me. At that moment, I couldn't hold back. I stood up, tossed my napkin on the table, and with more sarcasm than I intended muttered, "Well, thanks for finally letting me in on the secret." Then I walked out, didn't look back, didn't say goodbye. I just needed to get out of there. Driving home, my thoughts were racing. I couldn't stop picturing Rachel with him, and worse, I couldn't stop wondering how many times she'd looked me in the eye and lied through her teeth. But the waiting was over. I was done sitting on my hands. The very next morning, I booked an appointment with a private investigator, Coreline Investigative Services. I gave them everything I had, her work address, what I knew about Adam, even vague patterns in her schedule. I paid in advance and asked them to dig up whatever they could, anything that confirmed what I already suspected, or maybe what I hadn't even dared to imagine. Back at home, I started building a checklist. It was time to end this chapter, and I wanted to be ready. But I wasn't going to rush it. Not until I had their report in my hands. Rachel was clever, calculated. If she even caught a whiff that I was on to her, she'd pivot, spin the story, maybe even make herself out to be the victim. I wasn't going to give her that chance. As I was going through the motions, one thought kept gnawing at me. She knew me too well. She'd see signs if I wasn't careful. So I had to be smarter. I pulled out 5 certificates of deposit we kept tucked away in a drawer, something we'd agreed to hold for long-term savings. One by one, I made copies at the bank, keeping the originals exactly where they were. Until she physically takes them out and checks, she'll never know I've documented everything. Quiet insurance. Then while I was there, I dropped a little seed. "Hey," I told the banker, "I've been thinking about tapping into that line of credit we opened for the pool and hot tub project. Our names are still on the account, right?" They nodded. Turns out the funds had been paid back in full, which meant the credit was available again. Perfect. If I moved fast, I could access it before she realized what I was doing. I wasn't planning anything reckless. I just wanted to make sure she didn't blindside me financially like she did emotionally. You know, I used to wonder why Rachel wanted me to stay in the house while she figured herself out. Why not just ask me to leave if she needed space? But now I see it. She was keeping me close so I'd hold on to hope. So I'd wait. So I'd make it easier for her to live a double life without raising suspicion. Looking back, that hurt even more than the affair. She knew me well enough to use my loyalty against me. A few days later, I got a call from Tyler. He wanted to meet for coffee, said he felt bad about how dinner ended. I agreed, mostly because I was curious to hear what else he might be hiding. We sat across from each other, steam rising from our cups, silence thick between us. Finally he spoke up. "Mark, the way you stormed out the other night, it caught us off guard. Honestly, we didn't know how to say anything without hurting you." I looked him dead in the eyes. "You think not saying anything didn't hurt?" He had the nerve to look guilty. I leaned back and let the words hang there, waiting for him to explain why, when everything was crumbling, I was the last to know. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but before I could get a word out, Tessa raised her hand gently and said, "Mark, just let me finish." Her voice trembled a little, but there was a clarity in her eyes that made me stay quiet. "We get it," she continued. "We really do. It hurt when you walked out. Not because you were angry, but because we care about you. We weren't trying to keep secrets to hurt you. It's been a tough spot for us too, especially since Rachel and I are friends." She looked at me almost pleading. "We honestly thought she'd come back to you, that she'd realize what she was throwing away." I frowned, confused. "Wait, what are you talking about?" That's when she looked directly into my eyes and dropped a truth I never saw coming. "To be completely honest, Tom can't have children," she said softly. "We've tried. We've exhausted every option. And we want a child, desperately. That's why we're coming to you." I just sat there stunned. My mind couldn't catch up with her words. I couldn't even form a sentence. Did she just say what I think she said? She reached out, her fingers resting gently on my knee. "You always believed I'd never do anything to betray Rachel, and you were right. I never would have crossed a line. But things have changed. You're not bound to her anymore, not after what she's done." I didn't know what to feel. Anger? Confusion? Flattery? All I felt was silence. And then, something happened. Something I still don't fully understand. The pain, the betrayal, the emotional mess of the past few weeks, it all sort of blurred together. She led me to the bedroom, gently, without pressure, just quiet certainty. The weight of the moment pressed in on me from all sides, but for some reason I didn't resist. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was the desire to feel something, anything, that didn't hurt. She looked at me and whispered, "No sweet talk, Mark. I don't want comfort. I want something real. Let's do this, for both of us." And in that moment we crossed a line I never imagined we would. Afterward, the silence between us felt heavy. Not uncomfortable but full. Real. She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders and sat on the edge of the bed, looking distant. I was about to say something when she looked at me, eyes a little misty, and said, "I know this changes things. I know Tom's your friend. And I know this might haunt you. But I didn't know where else to turn. You're the only one I trusted." Later that day, as if the universe wanted to test my limits, Tom called. "Hey man," he said. "Mind grabbing a drink after work? I need to talk about something unpleasant." I agreed, though I wasn't sure how I was going to look him in the eye. 20 years of friendship sat between us as we sipped our beers in that dim bar, and I could barely swallow the guilt. He leaned back and exhaled deeply. "I love her, Mark. Tessa's everything to me. If I lost her, I don't know what I'd do. But if she ever went behind my back and betrayed me, I don't think I could survive that." I felt the glass in my hand go cold. Tom kept going. "I know I haven't been enough for her. She's anxious, distracted, distant. I can feel it. But I've always thought I'd rather face the truth head on than be lied to. I just hope, whatever's going on with her, she'll be honest." I nodded, forcing myself to stay composed. Inside I was a mess. I understood Tessa's pain and I understood Tom's love. But this triangle we'd created, was a storm waiting to break. I didn't know if I'd just helped someone through a dark moment, or if I'd helped destroy something that still had a chance. "I'm not against it," Tom said, swirling the ice in his glass. "But it has to be something you want too." I didn't know how to respond. The whole thing felt like a dream I hadn't woken up from, a twisted, surreal version of my life. I'd already crossed a line I never thought I would, and now Tom, my friend of 2 decades, was asking me to stay on that side of it. He looked down at his drink, then met my eyes. The idea that I can't be there for Tessa the way she needs, it tears me apart. But the idea of losing her altogether? That's worse. "I trust you, Mark. I need you to do this for me. Can I count on you?" I sat there, stunned. I wanted to say no. I wanted to walk away from all of it. But instead, I nodded. That Sunday I invited Tessa over. By the time I walked through my front door, I'd already decided, if I was going to walk this path, I had to own it. I couldn't keep half committing, half hoping it would all disappear. I needed a plan. The only path forward, as far as I could see, was to finalize things with Rachel, and to do it on my terms. I decided to quietly move forward with tapping into the home equity line. Rachel didn't know I still had access, and I intended to use it before she could react. I'd already spoken briefly with a lawyer, gathered what I needed to start the paperwork, but something kept me from pulling the trigger. Maybe it was hope. Maybe fear. Over the next 5 weeks, I saw Tom and Tessa often. Sometimes at their place. Sometimes mine. Sometimes I wondered what people would think if they knew what was going on behind those closed doors. And through it all, I still thought about Rachel. Despite everything she'd done, I realized I still loved her. But I also knew that even if she walked through that front door tomorrow, apologizing and asking for another chance, I couldn't go back to the way things were. That relationship had already died. I just hadn't buried it yet. I kept my feelings to myself. During our weekly calls, she kept feeding me the same lines. "I'm seeing a therapist now," she said one night. "He's helping me work through things. I just need a little more time, Mark." Her voice always sounded tired but never sincere. She talked about making progress, as if she was reporting to a counselor, not a husband. I listened, nodding along, knowing that most of what she said wasn't real. She was stalling. And I was done waiting. I didn't tell her what I knew about Adam. About the whispers I'd heard from a friend at the fraternal order where he volunteered. How he'd been climbing the ranks, attending every meeting since becoming sergeant at arms. I didn't tell her that he was probably already planning his next move, not just in the order but with her. One Wednesday evening, after another hopeful meeting, Adam parked his car outside his apartment, no doubt feeling like his life was headed exactly where he wanted. That confidence wouldn't last. Whatever happened next, I wasn't involved. But it changed everything. Meanwhile, I had quietly begun moving resources. I used one of Rachel's credit cards to buy 2 digital security cameras, gave one to Bill, the other to Steve, both guys I trusted. I bought a laptop and a flat-screen monitor for Mike using her MasterCard. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about the money. It was about reclaiming control. In my own strange way, it was a thank you to the people who stood by me while everything around me fell apart. People who didn't look away when I needed someone to see me. And yet, with every action I took, I still felt the weight of everything that had happened. The betrayal. The silence. The choices I'd made in response. This wasn't just about Rachel anymore. It was about who I was becoming, in the wreckage of who I used to be. I ended up giving Phil the aluminum bat through eBay. Don't ask, long story. The funny part? Rachel paid for it without even knowing. Poetic in a way. After everything with Adam White blew up, and after the police officially cleared me of any involvement, I took a much-needed break. I had 6 weeks of unused vacation time and a few weeks of PTO saved up, so I took 2 full months off. I needed the space, and more than that, I needed time to execute the plan I'd been quietly building for months. When Rachel lost the house, it didn't take long for her to lose the Lexus too. She had no choice but to downgrade to a used Kia. When I heard about her new reality, I didn't feel much. Just a quiet sort of resolution. She'd made her choices. She could live with them. I flew back from Mexico and rented an apartment on the opposite side of the city, far enough that I'd never have to run into her by accident. I wanted a clean break, and I made sure I got one. Meanwhile, Tessa was 5 months along, and to be honest, she looked even more radiant than before. There was something about the way she carried herself now, confident, grounded, glowing. We picked things up again naturally. No need for secrets this time. No need to glance over our shoulders. We saw each other 2, sometimes 3 nights a week, trading off between my place and hers. It was peaceful for a while. Almost too peaceful. Then Rachel showed up. I don't know what she expected. Sympathy, maybe? A chance to rewrite history? She started with her usual half-sincere lines, but this time I cut her off. "I get it," I told her. "You want to talk. But I'm done with your stories, Rachel. I'm tired of hearing you twist things to make yourself feel better." Her tone shifted. "I came to return the money you say I owe you. And don't act like you didn't take your share of what we built together." I laughed coldly. "You took out a loan against the house behind my back, Rachel. Half of everything we owned was mine, and you used it like it was yours alone. I'm just settling the score." She narrowed her eyes. "You're not getting away with this. I'll take you to court if I have to." "Go ahead," I said. "You'll get a court order. There'll be a deadline. And I still won't pay." She glared at me, speechless, as I continued, calm as ever. "I don't have any bank accounts in my name. My car's leased. I live in a furnished rental. There's nothing to seize, and your lawyer can keep sending you bills for hours he'll never collect on." I finished my drink and let the silence hang in the air. "You know," she said bitterly, "the one thing I regret most? is that we couldn't just talk. If we just communicated like adults, maybe things would have been different. Maybe life could have actually been good. You can be really unpleasant, Rachel, I said, standing up. And me? I'm just a charming little crook who finally learned how to play the game. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. Maybe she didn't. Enjoy your miserable life, I said flatly. And with that, I walked out of the bar without looking back. 3 days later, everything changed again. But that's a story for the next part. A few weeks after that last conversation with Rachel, the divorce papers showed up at my door. The reason? Irreconcilable differences. I didn't fight it. I couldn't argue with the words on the page. After everything we'd been through, irreconcilable barely scratched the surface. And then, not long after that, came the loss I never saw coming. Tom had kept it hidden, from Tessa, from me, from everyone. Turns out the illness had been growing silently inside him. By the time they found the cancer, it had already spread. There wasn't anything they could do. One moment he was there, sitting across from me with that same tired smile, and the next we were planning his funeral. At the service, everyone stood in stunned silence. Even Tessa, usually composed, always poised, seemed hollowed out by the weight of it. When it was over, she quietly handed me a sealed envelope. My name was written on the front in Tom's handwriting. Above it, in small letters. For Mark's eyes only. I looked at her, confused. She just gave a slight shrug. I haven't read it, she said softly. It's for you. Whatever it is. I figured you should have it. Back at home, curiosity got the better of me. I sat at the kitchen table, hands trembling a little as I slid my thumb under the flap. Inside was a single folded page. It was a letter from Tom. A goodbye. And an explanation. He wrote about how he'd suspected something was wrong with his health but didn't want to burden anyone, not even Tessa. Not me. He wrote about regrets, about friendship, and about trust. He said he never blamed me. Not for anything. In fact, he thanked me, for being there, for taking care of her in the way he couldn't. It broke me. Tom, of all people, should have hated me. But instead he left me with grace. And forgiveness. That kind of generosity is rare. And it made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. In the months that followed, life began to shift. I moved on from the past slowly, with intention. My daughter June kept me grounded. Basketball practice, homework, the little things, they reminded me that life still had joy in it, even if it didn't look like the life I used to know. I'd see her on the court, stealing the ball from kids twice her size, sprinting down to the net like her feet never touched the ground. Her sister April would sit beside me, calling out plays like a seasoned coach. And somewhere in those moments, those ordinary, chaotic, beautiful moments, I found peace. One afternoon, after June dominated the scoreboard again, we all sat on the bleachers waiting for her coach to wrap up. Coach Simmons had given this whole speech earlier about sportsmanship and teamwork, and I caught myself nodding along like it still applied to me. Dad, June said suddenly, you always try to make everyone happy. Is that a bad thing? I asked, laughing. Not really, she replied. Except when you play against us. You never go easy on April or me. That's 'cause I know you two are tougher than you look, I said, nudging her shoulder. Later that night, I thought about Sarah again. Sarah had never tried to make me feel like I wasn't enough. She'd loved me the way I was, flaws and all. She never compared me to Jason Benson, the so-called golden boy from our hometown. But I did. I always did. Jason, the war hero. The class valedictorian. The guy who seemed born to win. Even though Sarah and Jason had history, dating back to high school before they went their separate ways, she'd chosen me. Still, a part of me always felt like I was living in his shadow. Like no matter what I did, I came in second. Not because Sarah ever said so, but because that's what I told myself. Over and over. Sarah had gone on to be wildly successful in the hotel industry, despite her parents pushing her to become a lawyer. She carved her own path. Built her own name. And she never once made me feel small for walking a slower road. The truth is, I never needed to be Jason. I just needed to be present, for Sarah, for my girls, and now, for myself. And finally, I think I'm learning how to be that man. Sarah had always been ambitious, and honestly, I admired that about her. After graduating, she wasted no time climbing the ladder at a local hotel and conference center that was part of a national chain. Within a few short years, she'd earned the top job, and 2 years ago, they offered her a regional promotion. But the position came with a catch: relocation to Kansas. She turned it down. Not worth leaving everything behind, she told me. My home is here. We're here. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a quiet surge of pride when she said that. One evening as she finished setting the table, I noticed something different. She was wearing one of her nicer dresses. Nothing flashy, just a little more polished than usual. "Something special going on today?" I asked. "You're looking a bit extra." She smirked and raised an eyebrow. "Greg, don't start. I had a couple of high-profile guests at the hotel. Just had to look the part, that's all." I nodded, but something lingered in the back of my mind. "Is it about Jason?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "He's been back in town for a while now, and I know folks keep bringing him up." Sarah sighed, resting her hands on the counter. "Greg, this is strictly business. You're my husband. The only man I love, and the only one I've ever loved. I need you to believe that." "I do," I said quietly. "And it means everything hearing you say it." Still, I had to ask the question that had been poking at me for days. "Then why didn't you tell me about Jason's return?" She hesitated, then looked down at her hands. "Because I knew it'd bother you. I didn't want to stir up old insecurities or bring him into our space. He doesn't mean anything to me. Not now. Not ever." I believed her. I really did. But the fact that she still had to say it, well, it reminded me that the shadows we carry don't always vanish just because we're loved. That night, after dinner, June joked about how tired Sarah looked. "Guess it's leftovers for us," she laughed. "Roast beef again?" "Looks like it," I said. "Your mom's too wiped out to make anything fancy." Sarah laughed along, but her cheeks flushed a little. June, sharp as ever, grinned. "Better cover our ears," she teased. "Last time Mom was this tired, we didn't get much sleep either." Sarah turned bright red and shooed the girls upstairs, whispering to me, "We should probably wait until they're asleep. They already think we've got some kind of secret business." Later that night, behind our closed bedroom door, we found each other again. Not just physically but emotionally. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't complicated. Just two people reconnecting after a long stretch of life happening too fast. The next evening, she was cooking dinner when I came up behind her and wrapped my arms around her waist. She leaned into me, smiling. "This is the real test, isn't it?" I said. "Making it through all the hard stuff and still finding our way back to each other." "It is," she replied. "And you know what helps? Talking to each other. Like adults. Being real about how we feel, even when it's awkward." I kissed her cheek and she turned to face me, grinning. "No one compares to my man," she whispered. I pulled her in close, holding her tighter than I had in a long time. Just then, April came into the room and rolled her eyes. "Seriously, you too? This is the kitchen. Where I cook." Sarah laughed and tried to pull away, but I held her close. "Let her judge," I said. "I'm not moving." She shook her head, blushing, and we all laughed. It felt normal. Safe. Ours. Later that week, Sarah hosted a big event at the hotel. The plan was to wrap things up by 6 o'clock, but by 7:30, a group of guests still lingered, hovering near the open bar and trays of snacks, not quite ready to call it a night. Watching her move through the crowd, confident, calm, in control, I realized how much she meant to this city. And to me. I wasn't Jason Benson. I never needed to be. I was me. And for Sarah, and our girls, that was enough. I slipped quietly into Sarah's office, hoping to surprise her. I'd picked up a pair of earrings she'd been eyeing for a while. Nothing extravagant, just something elegant I knew she'd love. My plan was simple: surprise her with the gift, then invite her to the neighborhood party next weekend. I figured she could wear the earrings, show them off a little, and feel like the star she already was in my eyes. I waited for her to return, pacing quietly near the window, the little jewelry box in my coat pocket. But the minutes dragged and she still hadn't come back. Just as I was about to sit down, I heard voices. Her door creaked open. I froze, not wanting to ruin the surprise. Then I realized she wasn't alone. Jason's voice. I didn't mean to listen. I swear I didn't. But something in his tone made me pause. Low, familiar, a little too intimate. Then Sarah responded. "I'm married, Jason." My heart skipped. My husband would have picked up on something right away. He's not clueless. He would have been upset, to put it mildly. Jason answered her calmly. "Greg? He's not the type to make trouble. I've known a lot of guys like him. He stayed behind. Never served. Went to PDA meetings, helped out at bake sales. He's safe." Safe. The word hit me like a slap. Sarah pushed back, firm, steady. "He coached our daughter's soccer team when the real coach got into that car wreck. Didn't even know the rules at first, but he taught himself. He read books, watched videos, stayed up late learning the game so the girls wouldn't be left behind." I stood in that small bathroom connected to her office, barely breathing. My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the sink, trying to stay quiet. trying not to fall apart. He's not brave, Jason said. Not in the traditional sense. But maybe that's what you need. There was a pause. Then Sarah's voice, curt and controlled. We had some unforgettable memories. I won't deny that, Jason admitted. But those belong to the past. They do, she replied. And so do you. A moment later, I heard the door open then close. Silence. I waited a beat longer just to be sure, then slowly slipped out of the bathroom. I kept my head low, avoiding the receptionist as I made my way through the hallway and out into the lot. The earrings were still in my pocket. They stayed there. I crossed the parking lot under the dull glare of the afternoon sun, the silence ringing in my ears. Whatever part of me that had still been holding on, started to let go.